You're going to love today's episode. We are joined by Bill Nikolouzakis. He has built a career spanning over 2 decades as a business owner, C-level executive in various ASX-listed companies. He has had businesses acquired, started his first company at 21 years of age, and established 3 businesses before the age of 26. Bill is currently the Managing Director of Levels Growth Consultants and co-founder of one of the fastest growing digital law firms in Australia, Bond Property Lawyers. We had a laugh on today's episode. Bill is absolutely a straight shooter, so you're going to hear how it is and hear his incredible journey. And also he goes for Arsenal, and Tottenham are playing today after this episode airs. So look forward to you listening in. Enjoy the episode. Welcome to The Leap, a business journeys podcast where we dive deep into the journey of business owners to learn from their successes and failures. Our goal, it's a simple one, to help more businesses succeed. Well, we're here, Bill. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. What do you think of the jersey?
It's good that you're supporting a club, even though they're so horrible. You know, it shows a lot of character when you support a team that's so bad and you continue to support them. Shows that you've got a good character.
The listeners might appreciate us taking this podcast into a different direction and just talking Arsenal and Tottenham shit.
Well, for those, I'm a mad Arsenal supporter. I've been following for about 25 years. Went to watch them in October last year. Live, so I follow
at the library. Is that what they call it?
Yeah, mate, it's way louder than your stadium, and it's the best football team in London by a mile. So let's not even go there.
I love it. I will say I'll have to give a shout out to my brother because he's an Arsenal fan, and we've travelled away to both Arsenal games and Tottenham games, and he was pretty impressed by the Tottenham away supporters. So.
Maybe not this year. This year, our crowd's been brilliant. So when you're winning, it's always better, obviously. But yeah, you wouldn't know about that.
Our fans always turn against us, mate. So they're already a bit sour about the whole 5th finish. So, but mate, obviously, I'm keen to jump into it. And I guess where I wanted to start off with is, a lot of people's journeys to success, it's not linear. Right, people, usually have, I won't say failures, right, but there's learnings along the way, and you learn a lot from being in business, from previous business ventures, and you started your journey pretty early on. I think you were it was 21, 22?
21, yeah.
That's incredible.
I started my first business when I was 21, which is a little marketing company. We used to sell leads to mortgage brokers, and it was actually really, really profitable little business, but like most 21-year-olds, we probably thought we're a bit smarter than we were. And we thought, hey, we're selling these leads to mortgage brokers. Why don't we just write the mortgages? And we went and did all the stuff that you need to do to become a mortgage broker, which is not much back then. You could be a taxi driver today and a mortgage broker tomorrow. Yeah. A bit more now. You got to go do set fours and stuff. And we started writing mortgages, and we were pretty good at writing mortgages because the leads were so good. We were really horrible at settling them, and we were even worse at running businesses. Like we had no idea about how to cash flow a business, the financial side, the tax side. And that's one thing that I've learned very much in my career. It doesn't matter how good you are at the thing, whether you're a mortgage broker, a real estate agent, a technologist, whatever. Running a business is a totally separate thing, and you've got to be knowledgeable enough to be able to not only be good at your thing, mortgages or whatever, but then really good at the basics, the 101 business stuff, how tax works, hiring the right accountants, making sure you've got the right legal structures in place, and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, I've learned from, my mistakes as well early on in the journey, not having the right, advice behind me from an accounting perspective, wrong structures. And I guess in the long run, it really hurts you when you have to retrospectively go back and then change those things. Yeah. Learn a lot of lessons, right, doing it that way. So, I mean, from, someone starting off in a business, like what would you sort of suggest? I mean, looking back from what you learned from that period?
First thing I'll say is just, you have to be, you have to have an idea that you think is better than what's out there right now. And it doesn't mean you have to be the best. So let's just say mortgages. It doesn't mean you have to be the best mortgage broker in Australia and that's why you want to start a business. Mm-hmm. But maybe you could be the best mortgage broker for first homeowners in Abbotsford. right? Or in the inner north of Melbourne. Or maybe there's some niche that you could be the best at. And I think that's really important. You have to truly believe deep down that you're the best at something. Like I said, it doesn't have to be the best mortgage broker in Australia, but it has to be something that you think you've got a market where you can actually provide a better level of service than anyone else. And I always say to people, you got to believe it so much that if the person you're sitting across from doesn't use your product, doesn't buy your product, or doesn't use your service, then you've done a disservice to them. You've actually not done something right where they're not going to use you and they're going to use someone else and get a worse outcome. That's how strongly you have to believe in that idea. And I always say, the idea you start with might not be the idea you end with. So don't get too wedded to that. Just start. If you think you're going to be great at something, just start and you'll work it out as you go along if it's worth it. We talked about that first business. I had another business when I was in my early 20s that failed as well. When I say failed, we didn't go bankrupt or anything, but didn't work. It wasn't until my third business when I was about 25, Nikolouzakis Property, we started that. And even in that first year, I would say that business failed too. And then we did a big model pivot in the second year, and that's when it started to work. But it was pretty much like starting a second business because the model changed so drastically.
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting, right? I think two things there, like with what you were saying before, that question of, go deep or go wide. I always look at the situation that we're in and you feel like you miss out on opportunities if you don't have this breadth to your service. But I think I've definitely learned that you need to be really like an industry expert and a thought leader in that particular field. And I think that's a really important lesson to be really, like in that mortgage broking space, be really specific to a sector, whether it be, nurses or whatever it is. It's important to be, really niche in that sector, I think.
Yeah, if you can niche out, then you're definitely going to get better results over the long term. What I will say is when you first start a business, don't really start in a way where you have to think about, if I'm going to be like this $1 billion company, what would that look like? What does a scaled business like this look like? Just do what you have to do to earn revenue early on. It's not wrong to be broad and take, if you want to do nurses, you take mechanics at the start, but then you do want to, even if it's a service like mortgages, we're talking about mortgages a lot today, but about mortgages, you want to try and productize it as much as you can. So that means that you got really succinct processes, you got a really clear buyer persona that you're dealing with, so that you can really productize what you're doing. Because if you productize what you're doing, it means you become more efficient. Your capital allocation becomes more efficient. Your time becomes more efficient. Your productivity is better. But then also you're building this automated machine that is more saleable in the future, or that you can move away from if you wanted to, install a CEO, whatever you want to do 20, 30 years down the track. So, niching out's important, but I would say early on, just do what you have to do. Don't worry too much about what it's going to look like scaled. Just do what you got to do. Get some runs on the board.
Survive.
Get some money in the door. Yes, survive. Because, where they say no one fails, they just stop. They quit, right? So it's about just getting into doing what you need to do to earn that cash flow, learn, and then iterate.
So with Nikolouzakis, right, you were like, how did you know if you had done enough in terms of activity? Because you obviously pivoted. What was it? A year into it?
About a year in, yeah.
Yeah. How did you know that it needed a pivot? Because you're pretty early on a year on.
I'll tell you how naive I was. I started that business in January 2008. I don't know if you can remember what happened. That was the financial crisis in late 2007. Pretty stupid idea. One thing that wasn't stupid is I had some pretty good capital behind me. I sold one of my properties and I knew that I was going to have enough money to run this business for a period of time. And what we did then is we had this really good product and I loved that product and people loved it. It just, the market wasn't nowhere near big enough for us to make enough money selling just that product. We sold these property reports to developers to help them sell their projects, right? So research on why to invest in that product and we put together all the supporting information, along that with valuations, rental appraisals, a lot of information, and we packed it up in a really nice way. But you just couldn't sell enough of these at $5,000 or $4,900 that we were selling them for at the time to make enough money to live, right? There just wasn't enough people that needed that type of marketing or research. And I was never a real estate agent. I couldn't sell real estate. But I knew that was the angle we had to go down. We had to find a way to not only provide the reports, but then use them to find buyers and to become a sales agent effectively. I met someone that was working at a company. They wasn't a friend or anything, but he was just a really good operator, one of the most knowledgeable property-specific people that I've ever met, and trustworthy guy. And I annoyed him enough over a long period of time to leave that job and come and be effectively a business partner in Nikolouzakis. He bought half the business from me for a very small amount. But we re-pivoted the model. He brought a license with him. We became a licensed estate agent, and then we niched out. We went and found projects in areas that we knew were going to perform. So, one of the first exclusive projects we did was in Footscray. We did townhouses there at like 390 grand. We're now probably worth $1 million. But back then we knew that it was going to perform. So we went in there. We said, what projects are in there? We found those projects. We put those research reports together. Won the listing from the developer, and then we distributed it in a different way. We didn't go to the general public. We went to other real estate agents, so property investment groups more specifically, and even financial people, mortgage brokers, accountants, and that kind of thing, who had clients that wanted to invest in property, and we distributed through that manner. And it proved like a really good move. Obviously, the revenue you can earn from that kind of thing is a lot more than selling a report. And we had a really good product that we knew, especially the finance companies loved. Because back then, if you bought shares, you had to go through a statement of advice. It's really detailed about all the risks and opportunities and all that kind of thing.
Wasn't super regulated, right?
No, but property, you could do whatever you want. It's super cowboy. Still is, but way more than. Now it's straightened out a lot more than it used to be. And we just brought some structure to it. And some research, and good and the bad. We had everything into the risks, and it just worked really well. And we didn't get it to a massive business, but it was very profitable, very good business. And we built it up slowly over the years, as we grew and as we pivoted the model again a little bit later on, just slightly, it became to a point where we were doing well, but we either had to stay like this forever or scale. And if you've met me, you know that growing things is my passion. I love building things, so I didn't want to stop. My business partner at the time didn't really want to build a business. Completely fine. So he sold his share to me, and then shortly thereafter, within a year, we had sold to a publicly listed company called iBuyNew Group, because they sold to the consumer, and they wanted someone that had the channel business and the research behind it. So it kind of progressed over a couple of model pivots over that time. But, if I told you, in 2008 when I started that business, that would sell real estate through financial groups and end up having clients like, Mortgage Choice, iSelect, Yellow Brick Road, Finsure, all as our clients and approved panel members, I would have never believed you, So it's you got to start. If you're going into something good, you got to start, and then more than likely it's going to move in an area you probably never thought it would go into. But as long as you've got that North Star. The research was our North Star. We knew we had the best research. How we made money from that was not what we expected, but the research is still the same. That pack, it evolved, but it was essentially the same idea from January 2008 to when we started to when I sold that business to iBuyNew Group in 2016.
There's some crazy things that I want to unpack, right? So you started the idea, so you came up with the concept, you'd sold an investment property, you had this money, you must have really believed that you were onto something, right? Because usually people, was there a test and learn stage, or was it just...
So remember I told you I was in banking and finance, and when I left the bank, I went to work for a mortgage broker, and he had a great business. And being who I am, I moved very quickly up that business, and I was managing part of it at this stage, and we diversified, and we said, we're going to start doing risk insurance, and we started referring that out. And then we thought, hey, our clients now have had their mortgages with us for a long time. They got equity. Let's do some property investment. And we had a financial planner that did financial planning, and everything worked great except for the property investment. We were naive. We put our clients with companies that were dodgy, that overpriced the properties, the valuations were coming in low. It was a disaster. Mm-hmm. And the owner at the time, Nazar, said to me, we're never doing property again. Forget about it. Don't ever talk to me about this again. It's horrible. And first it upset me, I swear. First of all, because, I felt like we let our clients down. But second of all, I thought, well, there's a massive opportunity here to give, a level of advice that's similar to what you would get if you bought a managed fund to an individual property or project. And that's where the ideation was, So
nothing existed.
There was a couple of people doing it. There was a couple of competitors. No one at scale, and no one doing exactly what we did. Yeah. But there was a couple of businesses out there, literally 2 or 3 that did something similar. But I would call competitors, but no one that did exactly what we did. We're very niche. Yeah.
So the idea was like, I mean, I'm guessing the data was somewhat accessible somewhere, right?
Yeah.
And you're packaging it together, and like, how do you then start to distribute and I guess monetize that? Like, where do you start? Marketing perspective, like.
The data was accessible, most of it public, some of it not public. So you had to go and get the reports done. And some of it was not even about the data itself, but being able to negotiate with a developer to say that we're going to get an independent valuation to price the project. No developer wants that, but we did that on every one of our projects, which none of our competitors did. Because the problem with buying new property typically is that it's overpriced. So we thought if we could counteract that, and that was the big issue that I had, right? So that was very sensitive to that. And the way we counteracted that was we got an independent valuation on every single project. We picked a valuer, and that valuation set the prices. Now the vendor, the developer would either say, you're kidding yourself, I'm not selling them for that, and we wouldn't sell the product. Or most of the time, we'd sell a pre-sale portion, so a small amount, just enough to get their funding, and then they'll sell the rest at high prices at settlement, to the public. Yep. So that was a big part. So some of the information was available, some of it was not available, reports that we commissioned, but it was important that, everyone would get a value if they could, but it's being able to negotiate with a developer and get him to see the value in getting that valuation. And it had to work. Like, so the reason they gave us they sold them a bit cheaper valuation because they knew we could get the sales quickly because we have a proven track record, and the valuation was integral for us getting those sales. And then the idea was you get those sales quickly from us, you can start construction, save months in the sales process, and then you can sell them for more later to the general public, if that's what you want to do, right? But we were interested in that pre-sale portion that the developer needed to get funding. So typically it's like 50% of the project or 30% of the project or something.
Yeah, okay. And I mean, the big thing is here, like, I mean, the whole concept of ever having a business in a position where someone comes along and says, hey, I want to buy it.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. And I'm guessing like that has to be it has to be a I don't know, the best feeling in the world, right? Like, what does it feel like?
When my business partner left, we explored selling it before he left, right? Because and before I bought it out from him, and no, we didn't have any idea about who to sell. Which we approached a couple of developers directly that we did a lot of business with. We spoke to a few people, but what I quickly found was as we scaled the business and as we built these processes and systems, technology systems and processes, and the reason I built them was because I wanted it to be more efficient, more productive, and eventually I didn't want to work in the business. I never thought about selling it. I just thought about, I want to build a business where I can install one of my team members into like a CEO type role, and I didn't have to be there anymore. It's like a succession plan. And funnily enough, what I've learned is if you build a business in that way, it becomes a very attractive acquisition target because suddenly there's no key person risk. If you're not there anymore, it still works, and it becomes a lot more acquirable business. So when I got approached, and another lesson, I guess, for anyone starting a business is one thing that I've been really big on, and I hate the word networking. Like, I don't network, but what I do is I like-minded people. I like people that are at similar stages or better than me in business, and I make an effort because it interests me to meet with them and talk to them, and I call it trading war stories. And I sat down with a guy named Mark for years before that, a couple of years, because he was in Sydney and he had built his business way quicker than I did, great business, and listed it on the ASX, and he had the great backers with him and his great board. And I just, he'd pick my brain, I'd pick his brain, and we'd just have this conversation every time I went to Sydney, or every second time I went to Sydney. We'd have lunch, or I'd just go to his office and catch up with him. And then when he had seen what I had done to process out the business, and I was on my own, he said, well, would you consider selling? And that was the first time I'd ever considered selling, is when they said those words pretty much, other than when Theo left. So then it happened really quickly. Like we're kind of, I would say, friends. So he kind of stepped away from it. One of the board members came in, and that's selling to a listed company is a experience in itself. Lot of stress, a lot of tactics that you're probably not used to as a small business owner, negotiating tactics that are used at no spaces that you learn over the years that you can fall for. But it was an awesome experience. Like, I loved the experience of selling that business, although it was super stressful. You never expect to sell your business for a decent amount of money. When you're building it in that way, it never really crossed my mind to build a business to sell it.
What was it in your business that made it a sellable business, or what were some of the key things that you had done to have it in a position where you could actually sell it?
So they wanted a channel sales business that had big relationships that we had. So we had these big relationships with ISLX and Yellow Brick Road and Val Financial and these guys, Mortgage Choice, and they wanted a company that had those relationships so they can help distribute the properties that they had, but also a business that's very process driven and technology first, because they were a technology business. And everything that I've built we were never a technology business, Nico, but we were, I would say, digital. Everything was tech first. So we tried to automate as much as we can, well before, that was a really popular
That was a thing, right?
Yeah, because my older brother was a software guy, so I had that around me all the time. So they liked that part of it. They liked that it was very process driven. We were very, very efficient capital wise. We were very careful with our expenses, profitable business, all things that make it more saleable.
Interesting. Now, tell me, how old, when you started Nico, how old were you
It's
then?
about 25, and I sold it when I was 8 years later. What's that? 33, 34, something like that.
So my age now, you'd already been acquired
Yeah,
by an ASX-listed company.
Yeah, it was, it happened quickly. Like 6 months before that, the business was a decent business. It was profitable, but I wouldn't say we were like, some amazing.
You weren't expecting it.
No, we weren't. And we weren't like, it's hard to explain. We weren't like an extraordinary business. We were just a good business. Yeah. But we had done things in a certain way where it was attractive to bigger businesses, the process, the technology, the big relationships, and they were all on purpose, But yeah, well, that sale experience was amazing. And then what happened sort of the years following that was even more amazing, just being involved in businesses like that, I was at every single board meeting, going to the investor days, and then eventually becoming the CEO of that group and the managing director, was just wild, from never really ever wanting to be in corporate to being the CEO of an ASX-listed company.
So that was your first corporate experience.
Yeah, and
really,
and honestly, I didn't like corporate. Like I would say it openly. I hate corporate.
Yeah.
Whereas now I've got an appreciation for it. I really do. I like some really smart people. Very different industry, and there's just a lot more people, so you get a lot more bad people. But that's only because there's a lot more people. If you had small businesses that were that big, you'd have just as many bad people. But the experience was pretty cool. And it wasn't exactly a one of the lessons I learned was, when someone buys your business, they do due diligence on you, but you should do the same amount on them. And I didn't. I did a little bit. I looked at the ASX announcements and things like that. But I sold to a business that was going downhill pretty quickly. So that was an experience in itself.
So what did you miss there? Like, you're going through financials, you can see cash in the bank, you can see.
I knew
revenue.
they were burning cash.
Yeah.
It was evident, but they had raised capital pretty comfortably a couple of times. What I guess naively I didn't realize that you learn these things as you go through experiences, right? What I didn't realize was that the capital in public markets is not unlimited. Eventually, investors lose faith, and they'd raised capital, made promises, and just didn't deliver. And then eventually, investors don't give you any more money, right? Surprise, surprise, right? That's what the stage they were at.
Yeah. So that's when you were like,
not immediately when they bought my business, but
I mean, you at
within the next 2
at
years.
that point, because a lot of the trade off was you having shares and equity in that business, right?
Yeah,
So,
I got half cash, half equity.
Yeah, okay.
And 2 years later, so I had a year in escrow, and then you don't sell when you're on the executive team of a publicly listed company. It's very hard to sell shares. It looks horrible, right? So you hold on to the shares. In fact, I think I put a little bit more money in. Not much, but a little bit.
You're like, trust me, guys. Look, I'm investing.
Yeah,
in
right. And I honestly believed in the business. And the guy, when they bought it from me, my friend that was the CEO, I believed in him as well. Problem was, I think within 3 months of them buying my business and it settling, he left. And the new guy that came in is fine, but he's not a digital guy, ran it like a real estate agent, which I didn't believe in, had some friction there. And, maybe about a year and a half, 2 years, less than 2 years after I sold my business to them, I went to resign. And, I made a phone call to the board members that bought my business, and I said to them, look, I don't believe in this anymore, I'm leaving. And funnily, it's so funny because I get so invested. Even when I'm working for someone else, I feel like it's my own business. And I was away with my ex-wife in Fiji, I remember, and I was super stressed and I hated it. And she's like, "Well, you don't own that business. You don't have to be there anymore. And it was like a realization. I thought, oh, she's actually right. I don't, I'm just an employee now, right? So, I went to resign, and when I went to resign, the questions were, why do you want to resign? And when I said, I don't believe in the direction we're going to and all that kind of thing, well, they said, well, and I basically said to them, look, I don't think we're going to make it because of the direction we're in. And they basically said, well, instead of leaving, why don't you try and save it? And weeks later, they appointed me CEO and managing director of the business shortly thereafter. And we went on a massive change management process to save the business.
At that time, right, you've literally gone from, doing your own ventures, right? Somehow, and you were sort of saying it was almost unexpected that the business has been acquired now.
Yeah.
You sitting there going, how the fuck am I the CEO of an ASX-listed business now,
if you saw the text messages from my friends, it was a pretty funny process. It is pretty. Mind you, it was a what I would call a nano cap ASX. It's not Telstra, you know what I mean? It's a very small ASX company. But what is true is that being the CEO of an ASX company is very different to being the CEO of even a big, small, private company. There's just a different element, not better or worse, just different. You're dealing with shareholders and the ASX and with audits, and there's very, very specific things you have to do in that process. And one of the things that's been true in all my career is that I love learning. I remember when I got into technology after this. Everyone thought that I'd been in SaaS my whole life, software as a service. But I remember the first 3 months, I read every book, I listened to every podcast. I just consumed my life with learning about this thing. And within 3-6 months, I was ahead of the curve on the knowledge. And it was the same with this. Like, I remember sitting in my first board meeting when I just sold the business, and they were talking about something called a 4C, and I just scribbled on my pad, what the hell's a 4C? Because I didn't even know what it was, but it's a cash flow report that goes out every quarter. That's common knowledge to anyone that's been in any public business, but I'd never been in one. So I'm writing down these dodgy little notes in little, so no one else can read them.
Did you feel out of your depth though?
Honestly, what I felt, this sounds a little bit arrogant, but I actually felt, these guys are not that much different to me. Like, they knew a few words I didn't know. And I say me, and I talk about every small business owner that's had a successful small business. Like, the big board members and directors and C-level executives of big companies, they're not smarter than you. You have a very different skill set. But I used to think that these big corporate guys were just these amazing financial geniuses. And what I learned was, they're smart, but so are small business owners. You got to be super smart to have a successful small business. So I felt. I remember in my first couple of board meetings, I felt like I had to learn a lot of glossary words. But other than that, I didn't feel out of my depth at all. Wow. It was actually, I thought I would, and I didn't. And I think what I found was that a lot of people moved up through corporate ranks that had never run a small business before, or never run any business. They move into CEO roles from being in other C-level executive roles. And I think it's not as good a grounding as running a successful small business, because the day-to-day of running a business, and especially if it gets to a certain size in small business where you're not on the tools, you're actually running a business. And that is very relatable to running a bigger business. You just got to learn, and you got to have a good CFO. And I remember when I on our board initially, when I went into that business, there was the guy that bought my business from me that did the negotiations. He was a really intelligent, experienced CFO who I'm friends with now, and I learned heaps from him. That's where I learned mostly about the ASX-listed stuff. And there was a guy who was an analyst who became my right-hand man, like our COO, when I became CEO, Eric Chow, who was this young kid, but he was a bloody genius, still is. And he was super smart, and he knew all the ASX rules. And, and I just lent on him. I was, that's the thing about business. You don't have to know everything. You just got to be good enough to hire people that know it, and be smart enough to bring them close and being able to build relationships and learn.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think I remember I joined the networking group Club of United Business, CUB.
Yeah.
Have they hit you up yet?
Heaps of times.
Yeah. Worth it.
Yeah.
You'll love it.
I've thought about joining once.
We'll talk about it.
I hate the word networking. That's what gets me.
Because I think Tom just joined up as well.
Yeah.
So shout out to Cup sponsor us for it. But I remember the first event that I went to, I was going up the elevator and I was shitting myself.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it's serious businesses. Do you know what I mean? Like there's a revenue qualifier, like it's an expensive thing to be a part of. And I had that sort of moment. I was like, fuck, like I was so nervous going up that elevator, being like, I shouldn't be in this room, and then it's now, I love the community. I love the group now. And I quickly realized, and I think I said it in my first session with my group, I was like, fuck, so no one knows what they're doing. Like everyone's just sort of working this out as they go. Everyone has the same sort of challenges. They might just be at a different scale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I think you get to a point where it's like numbers are numbers, right? They're a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I think there's you got to be humble enough to know you don't know everything, and you got to keep learning. But you've also got to have enough self-confidence to say, "Hey, I can do this." That person may be more successful than me doesn't mean that they're better than me. Maybe I can learn from them, or maybe I can do things differently. And I think that's important. You got to believe in yourself. You got to like to believe in your product. You got to have belief in yourself, but it's got to be, in a humble way where it's like, I believe in myself, but I need to keep learning. Like I don't know enough. Like, I still listen to hours worth of audiobooks and podcasts and read, and, I still feel like I know absolutely nothing, and funny that the more you go into senior roles, the more you meet even more smarter people. And then you think, I actually know nothing, like I know very little. So every time you think, hey, I'm pretty good at this, then you move up a level and you meet more people that are actually and you're like, oh, and I've got more to learn. So, and I think that'll never stop, I bet you Elon Musk sits around thinking, I've got more to learn,
Imagine.
Yeah, right.
He probably does, right? That's why he is where he's at.
Yeah.
Tell me, one thing that I'm interested to know, a lot of the people that we've had on the show thus far have started their journeys early. Do you know what I mean? I was 26, I think. You were early 20s. I felt like that's the time to do it, right? Because you might still be living at home. You don't have, there's not as much risk, right? It's hard because you fuck all at that early age, right? But it's like, how do you, I know a lot of people that listen to this, and I had the question come up the other day. It's like, it's easier when you're young, right? Because you don't have mortgages and stuff like that. How do you do it when you're older? What do you say to people?
So there's two things, right? After IBONU, I got a chief revenue officer role at a listed company, bigger listed company. And if I'd got that job at 25, I wouldn't have succeeded, right? Because the knowledge I'd learned from them. I just started a business at the same time, about a year and a half ago now. That's going extremely well. Bond Property Lawyers, which which is a digital law firm that's grown nationally in 18 months, growing at 400% year on year. If I started that at 25, it would have failed probably, right? So, but at the same time, I'm glad I made the mistakes when I did, because you're right. When you're 25, 21, like I was, I didn't have kids. I didn't have major commitments, and the failures are easier to take, right? You don't have to put food on the table for your kids. You don't have to worry about that. You're less prone to take risks when you've got all that. Even now, I'm way less prone to take risks than I was. I still do, probably more than most. But I think you're less prone to take risks, and that I think it also changes your psyche. You got to be. You've got to be ballsy when you're running, starting a business. You've got to make big decisions that could either really work or fail horribly. And I think that's an important part of growing a business, those big model pivots that we talked about, or, doing something really crazy that's going to change the industry that almost never is profitable immediately, right? Any kind of change. So yes, starting early is great because you learn those lessons that you have to learn. But, I see a lot of people that worked in really smart corporate roles, worked their way up, and then started businesses and had all the right experience, and then started a business and was more likely to be successful. So there's both one's not better than the other. I think if you're older and you feel like starting a business and you know what you're doing, start a business. If you're younger and you feel like starting a business because you've got an idea, start a business. You're going to have different challenges at different times.
Right?
Just start, and you're going to have different challenges. When you're older, you know more, you've probably had some experience, you're more likely to succeed. When you're younger, you can take more risks, and if you do fail, it doesn't really matter as much. So, there's swings and roundabouts, My thing is, if you think you've got an idea that can change something, then back yourself if that's what you want to do, or don't. and go work for someone at 9 to 5, whatever you want to do, whatever floats your boat.
Yeah. And I love that you've sort of done both, and you're not, like I have a bit of that mindset. It's like, fuck, I don't know if I could work for anyone again, but I like the fact that there's very entrepreneurial people in those big corporates and startups and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's I've never had thought to myself, I can't work for someone again. I don't. I think we spoke about this before, you and I. But when my business partner left, I got a business coach because I need actually accountability. Like I really like having a business partner or having somebody that I've got to like talk to about my results. And a business coach, I'm paying them. Like I'm not accountable to them, but also if I tell someone I'm going to do something, I'm going to bloody do it, right? So I'm going to work my ass off to do it. Whereas if I just told myself, might prefer to go for a few beers at the pub, like I'm not going to be as motivated. Like after this. No, but I've been working super hard lately. But there's I think working for someone else has never been a problem for me. I like that accountability. And what I've learned is that in big companies, those C-level execs, a lot of them are entrepreneurial. Like they run it like it's their own business. It's not like they're clocking in and clocking out or worrying about, most of their pay structures in bonuses. They've got big bases sometimes, but a lot of their pay structure at C-level is in bonuses as well. So it's you effectively are somewhat self-employed anyway.
That makes sense. I remember, so obviously like the PropTech journey was an awesome one, and I was lucky enough to
you're involved in that.
Yeah, to sort of be hiring for it and watch that evolve and grow, and it was crazy. I remember we actually met on Call of Duty.
We did too during COVID. That's right. Yeah. Jeez, I was horrible at that game.
I carried the team there.
You did it. Yeah.
But what I found really interesting and I loved about it is I remember when that time came to an end, we had a conversation, and there was something else that was in the works that didn't eventuate, and I'm like, so like, is there a plan now? Like, what are you going to do? And you were like, might do some consulting. I might do, and there was just not a confidence, but it was like, I think you knew that you were just going to do more successful shit. Like how does that, is that a mindset?
It's kind of like 10 years ago, I wouldn't be like that. But, I got appointed CEO of iBuy New Group literally months away from going broke. We turned that business around in 2 years, sold it, and then the share price increased by 500%, literally 500%. Like, the investors who were going to lose everything lost money but didn't lose everything, and they were very, very happy. So I had a pretty good relationship with a lot of ASX investors. And then one of them was the guy that hired me at PropTech Group, and then I went there and we listed that business at, or they listed it just before I started at 30-something million, 32 million or something. We sold it 2 years later for 100 million. Right, so we had a couple of pretty big successes in a row, and I knew that, and what you were alluding to was that I was offered another ASX CEO role, which I turned down at the last minute because some negotiations went sour. But I knew that I'd built up 20 years of industry experience and knowledge and a network, and also we're lucky at this, I'm not lucky, but at this age that, I wasn't worried if I did nothing for 6 months. Honestly, it probably would have been nice, So, but it didn't. And, and then next thing I thought about doing some consulting, and I remember I thought to myself, I'm going to just put up a LinkedIn post and see who replies that they need help. And I got 3 clients immediately, which is basically a full book of consulting clients. Within the first 3 or 4 weeks after that one LinkedIn post. And then suddenly I was a consultant. And, then my good friend, Rex Afrasiabi, who owned a law firm, he hit me up and he said, hey, there's a, legal tech's broken, let's build something. And next thing you know, we built a startup, Right. So
this is obviously, this is a fresh-ish business, a year and a half in. Like, I want to know, like, take me through from initial concept through to actually, like,
this is
in detail here, because this is, like, you've basically just disrupted a market that's been around for a long time.
So Rex Afrasiabi was my lawyer since 2009. We grew up in the same area, but really didn't know each other, but knew of each other. He became my lawyer. Then we became friends, and we've probably looked at 2 or 3 different businesses together potentially to start. We just wanted to start a business together. We love how each other works and we get along like a house of fire. We thought it'd be really cool to do something together. And when I left, he's like, hey, let's look at this side. Legal tech's broken for the conveyancing side, not for all of legal, although legal tech's broken across the board, but more on the conveyancing side.
Was that something that you identified that you're like, this is the biggest problem?
So he basically said to me,
because he did a conveyancing already.
He had a conveyancing business, but like every other law firm in Australia, it's like an afterthought because you don't make any money compared to law, right? Like an hourly rate, you can't charge 600 or whatever it is an hour doing conveyancing, right? So kind of every law firm, it's important to them because their clients want it and all that kind of thing, but it's not a big part of their revenue stream typically, and it's not the best people in the business aren't working on the conveyancing.
You got a guy sitting next to the printer, just
right. Yeah, right. It's typically it's not a super well run part of their business. The best part of their business. It's not the best part of any law firm, basically. Okay. Any commercial law firm, anyway. And the first thing we did was you said, yeah, great. Let me look at it. And I literally interviewed every software vendor that sells legal tech. So CRMs, all types of software. And he was right. Like, it's not great. I mean, it's good, but it's not. If you compare it to fintech or PropTech, it's very far behind from a quality perspective. In fact, most of the legal tech software is given away for free by the companies that do your searches, right? Yeah. So it's like it's not very advanced compared to the software in fintech, PropTech, where you're paying $100 a month per user, sort of thing, right? Mm. So obviously, it's going to be a different level.
So there was the initial thought, we just do this well using, an existing CRM or solution that's out there?
Yeah. So the initial thought was, let's build something. But then when I did all the interviews, I thought we could make a difference to the conveyancing world, provide more productivity and more efficiency, better communication to the client, all that kind of thing, by just deeply integrating through APIs and webhooks and things, different pieces of software. That was the initial idea. And the problem was that even if we could do that, it would create efficiencies, but we just didn't think that it would move the needle enough. We thought, it's great that you've created more efficiencies, but what does that turn into? How does that commercialize into a really successful conveyancing business? And we just couldn't really see that materializing. But we continued looking into it, and that's when something came up that really changed our mind. When you're building tech or when you're about to build tech, the first thing you do as a product sort of process is you interview everyone. When I mean everyone, so in conveyancing, we interviewed buyers and sellers, property developers. Then we interviewed other conveyancers, lawyers, and then we thought, well, who else is important? Who are the other stakeholders in a property transaction? Well, mortgage brokers and real estate agents. And what we found was that the mortgage brokers and real estate agents were an absolute afterthought. Not many law firms, conveyancing firms actually communicated with them in a way that improved the way they can communicate to the client. And what ended up happening is that created a worse overall client experience. So the buying and selling of real estate was created a worse experience overall, not the conveyancing process itself, but a worse overall experience because the conveyancer wasn't communicating and didn't bring the mortgage broker and real estate agents into the transaction as an equal party. And when we found that out, we thought, geez, that's a pretty big issue. And then the little penny dropped that who introduces all your clients to you as a conveyancer? Mortgage brokers and real estate agents. They don't like how it's being done, yet they provide us all the business. So we thought if we could fix that problem, it provides a better consumer experience, but it also makes the happier real estate agent and mortgage broker, and they're the guys that give you all the business. So,
and I guess the other thing was that that was your network as well.
Right. So, I know all the big mortgage aggregation groups and some of the, being a PropTech, even the big franchise groups, and Rex is the corporate lawyer for a lot of the real estate agents and mortgage brokers as well. Our network was extremely strong. And, that when we built that software and we started going out to speak to people, I think we just built a sales and marketing function, literally just started in May. First hire ever in sales and marketing, yet we grew 400% last year, and so we had it super organically, literally just calling in favors to friends and other agents to say, hey, we built this thing, it's pretty cool, test it. And because they were friends or colleagues, they'll test it and it did work and it was great. And we grew really quickly. And, one thing I'll say is that, again, just being experienced in business like Rex and I, where we knew that we're going to have this great tech, we had these great relationships, but what we knew was that he or I weren't the right person to run a highly efficient conveyancing team that's going to hit the service out of the park, because it's still a service. Tech aside, it's still a service. And we poached the best person that we could find to do that, who's been an absolute revelation for us, Mirella Rice. And she's run that team. Our Net Promoter Score's 200% above the industry benchmark in April. We've averaged that at about 170% over the last 6 months or so. We've got 199, I think, 5-star Google reviews. We've got a really high level of service. No matter how good your relationships are, how good the tech is, in a service-based business, if you give a bad level of service, all that's for nothing. So that's kind of all worked in well, and that growth happened. And now, we're taking that next step now. We've reinvested into that business, and we've hired some really high quality BDMs, really knowledgeable guys, and a marketing person. And we're going to now take that business to the next level. And, we've been really lucky to bring in, I don't think I can announce the name yet, but we've really been really lucky to bring in someone who's an absolute gun software person, the best in the business, quite literally, and a lovely guy and super smart, to help us rebuild the tech that we've integrated with other people's products, which, is in theory is great, but they break sometimes, which is normal in software, and you don't have control. They've got to fix it. So you're waiting for them to fix it, but your clients are upset with you because the software's broken. Okay. So now we're building it all ourselves, where we're going to be ready to go to market with that in June, July, probably July. We'll test it in June, July out to market, and it's going to be a game changer. It's going to be far better than what we're using right now. And I think that's, just being able, like I said, being able to bring the right people into the business. Mirella was a game changer. This person here was going to be another game changer. And, when you're running a business, especially as you scale, it sounds stupid and simple, especially for someone like you who's in the industry, but hiring the right people and getting really high quality people is the only thing that matters, and then being able to manage them to perform.
Yeah, but it's interesting, right? Because two things I want to probably touch on there, right? I think the first thing is, if you build, you have a great personal brand, Rex has a great personal brand, obviously the business does, and that is the attraction. So, us as a recruitment agency, we don't have to beg people. Do you know what I mean? It's an attractive proposition, and to a certain extent, you'll get people knocking on your door.
Yeah, and
right. I think that's a big part of it.
And I think a personal brand and a business brand coalesce a little bit in that, we as people and as a business, it's really important to us that we will make mistakes. We're not perfect, right? We'll try and make the minimal amount of mistakes, and we'll try and put processes and systems in place every time we make a mistake for it to never happen again. But we know that there's going to be mistakes that happen. And the kind of business that we are is that we take them so seriously, and we will fix those problems as quickly as possible, take ownership and make those things happen. And that's something that's really important to us. And I think, as you build a brand, people don't want to, don't want you to be perfect. I think people are smart enough to know that's not possible. It's about being able to then, trust in you as a person, your whatever you want to call it, your brand, your personality, that you're going to fix their problems and you're going to be there. And, a lot of the times fixing a problem can be even more valuable than ever having a problem, because people know that shit's going to go wrong. They want to know that you're going to fix in a timely manner and it's not going to affect their client.
Well, I think what's interesting as well, and I think goes back to what we're talking about, with, the opportunity of starting a business, when you're younger, there's less risk, I guess, but a lot of the things that have come with this new opportunity with Bond, the people that you've hired have been organically through your network and who you've met throughout your journey. All of the people that you just went straight to and you said, hey, we've got this. They were buying you. Do you know what I mean? A big part of it was them buying you. So I think a lot of it's not possible without that journey that you go on.
That's what I mean. As you're older, it's easier to start a business because you've built those relationships, you built those networks.
Exactly.
I was able to bring in one of the BDMs I brought in who used to work for me. The other one was the tech guy that we brought in, someone that he introduced to us that he knew was good. We already knew these people were going to perform. Although we didn't know Mirella, we knew of her from the industry very well. Brought her in. Rex and I obviously worked together. Mirella's brought in really high level conveyancers that she knew in the past. So it is building a business as you're older does have benefits, and that is that you know who you are, you know what you're good at, what you're not good at, and you have a network of people that you can bring with you.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, what do we expect to see next from Bond? Like, you know, when we're going to do this again in a year's time, right? Like, what is it?
Everyone, I say to everyone that my passion's not property, finance, legal, anything. My passion's building things. So you can better bet that if we're going to keep building, we're going to keep building. We're going to keep scaling. You know, we're already national in Australia. We'll look at new markets, and we'll look at, you know, consolidating in Australia and becoming bigger and bigger. I think that's, you know, automating as much as we can, providing a better level of service, better transparency, better visibility for our referral partners and our clients. All those things that are important to us, we'll continue to do, and we'll continue to grow that business. You know, one thing that we haven't spoken about is, you know, one of my biggest passions is keynote speaking. I've been doing a bit of that, and I want to do a lot more of that. So hopefully you see me doing heaps more of that in the future. You know, I love the idea of, you know, because I'm such an avid learner, I love the idea of getting a topic that I know well, researching the crap out of it, building a presentation that I know will resonate with people, then presenting it to a live crowd and seeing the change in the faces when a penny drops or an idea they have that's somewhat related to that's coming to their head. You know, that is the most rewarding thing ever. And, you know, I've always said that, you know, if I could do that forever, I would. You know, that's the one thing. You know, building stuff is my passion, but geez, doing that is really rewarding.
And I've seen you know, all the positive feedback from some of the big groups that you've presented at, and I think it's because it's you know, when you're in a lot of them have been big corporate businesses that you've presented to, and you know, you're a no bullshit type of person. You know what I mean? I think that's
I think that is almost on the spiel. You know, not no bullshit, but I think just think they use straight talker. The marketing people that they use straight talker.
So politically correct.
The politically correct way. Yeah, but
awesome, man. Jump onto the rapid fire section.
Let's do it.
What are you, in terms of like podcast, audio book, like what does your morning commute drive look like? What are you listening to at the moment?
I listen to a lot of audiobooks and I also read a bit, but yeah, audiobooks are big. I listen to selected podcasts. I used to do a lot more podcasts, but I moved to audiobooks recently, last 6 months or so, but I still listen to a few. So the All In podcast is one that I never miss. It's weekly. It's 4 tech billionaires, all mates, that come in and have a chat and talk about the current sort of state of the markets. And that's just, you know, learning from people that have been way more successful than you is always good, and seeing their insight into things. Some things you trust and some things you don't, but you know, they've always got vested interests, talk their book, but it's just one I really enjoy, and it's fun to listen to. They're just 4 mates that rib each other as well. You know, it's just fun to listen to.
Yeah. Well, just out of curiosity, because I've tried audiobooks and I'm like, it's been a bit boring versus, you know, a podcast. Like, any audiobooks that you'd recommend for people out there?
Oh, geez, there's so many. Like, I love. There's 2 types of audiobooks to listen to: biographies, which I love. I forget the name of them now, but I recently listened to the book. I say read, but I listened to the book.
Yeah,
sounds weird to say that. Listen to the book on Amazon and on Jeff Bezos. That was that was really changing from a perspective of how he did that and who he was as a person. Barack Obama's book was boring in parts, but also quite interesting. I read that recently, and then I've read The CEO Within. I've said, I'm bad with names. There's a really good book about how to sell a business. The name escapes me now, but it basically talks about it from a first person perspective of someone that a fictional character that was selling his business and what he did to set that up. And he talks about key person dependency and all the things that you know. But a lot of the times when I read books, and it's not only about learning something new, it's remembering things I forgot.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
Spot on. I think a good one. Have you read The Pumpkin Plan before?
No.
Read that. It's really simple, but like it's about a guy who grows. His goal is to grow the biggest pumpkins, and it's an analogy, obviously, to business, right? To know what to, you know, when you've got these shitty clients, you know that they're going to be shitty clients. You know, there's no point in fucking watering them. Do you know what I mean? Focus on the big ones. And
the only book I reread is one of the first books I've read as an adult. You know, that I wasn't forced to read in school. It was called "Screw It, Let's Do It" by Richard Branson, and it's like a tiny book. You could read it in a night or two, but it's just so motivating. And I love his personality. I love how passionate he is. He cares about his people, and he builds these great brands and great businesses. And I just love he's always been my prototype. Like I hate the stuffy business people that, like that's not my style. The suit and tie, the really, proper people, that's not my style. And Richard Branson's always been really someone I looked up to, because I love that style. I love that he cares. He's not some rash, like, trying to stuff people over kind of person. He cares, but he's tough. He's good at business, and he has fun. And that's,
he does, doesn't he? Yeah, I love that.
I wish I had as much fun as him.
That's awesome. We're not billionaires. But no, I think he's enjoyed the journey for sure. Like it's that's a good read. Shoe Dog's another good one.
Shoe Dog's a great one. Yeah. There's Elon Musk got followed around by a biographer a few years back. That was a really interesting one as well. Yeah. Just hearing the stories, it's, I always say to people, every successful person I know has either been close to bankruptcy or bankrupt. Like you think about Elon Musk, he made $400 million selling a business and blew it all in a couple of years because he started these 3 massive other companies. And if that last rocket blew up at SpaceX, I think there was a rocket,
wild.
All those businesses would have been bankrupt. It's just wild to think that someone made $400 million and could be bankrupt in 2 or 3 years.
Everyone you listen to, like they've, most of the time they've lost it all, right?
I mean, because to make a lot, you got to risk a lot, and the risks don't always work, no matter how smart you are. You can mitigate risk, like all those things are really important. And as you get older, you learn those things. But I mean, when you're playing at his level, it's very hard to mitigate risk. And when you're talking about hundreds of millions of billions of dollars,
when we're talking rocket ships,
mitigating risk might be maybe a little bit harder when you're talking about rocket ships. But for us, you can mitigate risk as you get older, and you got a bit more capital, and you a bit more smarts about you. It's less likely. Not impossible, but less likely I'm going to go bankrupt now than when I was 25.
100%. Last question, right? One thing that I've been obsessed with, I'd say probably the last 2 or 3 years is like routines, rituals, habits. How important is that to you in maintaining and staying in the right headspace running a business? Are you, talk me through that.
Yeah, I feel attacked right now.
Okay.
I'm I hate to say this because it's almost embarrassing, but I'm horrible. Like I don't have a routine.
Yeah.
I very much I know what I have to do, and I do what I have to do. I've got like 2 or 3 periods throughout the day where I know that I have blank in my diary just to do like follow up, because I never want to be too long to call someone back. That's the only thing that I structure really. Everything else is, and I have structured internal meetings, but everything else is what's the most important thing that needs to happen right now, and then I'll attack that and get that thing done. I'm a big believer in time blocking and deep work. So I'll turn the phone off, don't return emails for 2 or 3 hours and get some deep work in. But in terms of routine, I know I'm at my best when I'm going for less dinners and drinking alcohol. I know when I'm going to the
tomorrow
gym,
we're not going to be
tomorrow I'm probably not going to be firing for anyone who's got meetings with me. But I know I'm better when I'm going to the gym regularly. Like I know there's certain behaviors, but there's not really a routine. I know there's certain behaviors that if I follow those behaviors, I'm going to be a lot more efficient, for sure. But I've never been one to be like ice baths at 5 a.m., journal, meditate. It's just not my style, I don't start work till 9:30. I wake up at 7, I hang out with the kids sometimes in the morning. I'll go for a walk, I'll go to the gym, I'll have a coffee, walk to the cafe, get a coffee, come back. And then by 9, I've got no meetings before 9:30. It's impossible unless it's someone needs to see me early, but I don't do that because I'll work till late. That's just my style. I'll rather work from 9:30 till 9:30 than from 6:30 till 4:30. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
it's the same thing.
Yeah. Look, for me, there's a few things that I've started to do, but I think, one thing that you hear some of these people on Instagram, and you just want to pop yourself, right? Like they're sitting there saying, like 1 hour of gratitude, and then journaling, and then the ice bath, and then this, in the first 4 hours. I'm like, man, imagine there's no way you built a successful business spending 4 hours. Doing that shit at the start.
I know people that genuinely do that stuff and it works for them. Yeah. I know people that genuinely, not a lot of people say it and don't do it, but I know people that genuinely do it and are super smart people that have been successful. So I'm not knocking it, but I think you got to do what's right for you. What I learned was I used to get burnt out, because I work. I'm a sprinter, so I'll sprint for 2-3 months and then I need time. I need 3 or 4 days off. I'm not a marathon runner, I sprint. So I'm working 12-hour days, 3-4 months in a row, 13-hour day, and then I'll just need a week off or a few days off, and that's how I work, and I know that works for me. Before what I used to do is I used to try and do these 1 month holidays a year, and then all at once, because then I'm fully relaxed. But I'd burn out halfway through, and I'd be stressed, and I'd be put on weight, and and it just wouldn't work for me. And I learned over the years that having this cadence of this core, and it doesn't work for everyone, but for me, that's how I work. And now I don't get burnt out, and stress levels are lower, anxiety levels are lower, and all those types of things. And I find I'm way more efficient doing that.
Yeah.
So everyone's different,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But mate, appreciate having you on the episode. We'll obviously drop a link and a tag if anyone's looking for mentorship, guidance, coaching. We'll drop the link in there to hit you up. And obviously it's across different industries. It's a lot of work on mindset and helping businesses that are sort of stuck in that pre $500,000 stage get to the next level, right?
Yeah, so the coaching, consulting, I deal with businesses that want to take it to the next level, and I deal with the owner, so one-on-one.
Yeah.
My consulting business is a bit different. It's, again, for businesses that want to scale. So most of my clients, coaching or consulting, are not startups. Typically, they've been around for a little while. They've got a bit of revenue, from $500,000 to 10 mil, and they want to take it to the next level, scale. So the consulting is a bit different to the coaching in that I'm dealing with the team. So, I'm helping them build structures, projects to help them scale. Whereas the coaching is more just a one-on-one with the owner, helping them put things in place.
Yeah.
Keynote speaking is a big one. Anyone that wants a keynote speaker that's straight talking, happy to chat. And real estate agents, mortgage brokers, if that resonated, the bond property law stuff resonated with you, I'd love to chat to you about that as well.
Awesome. Appreciate it, man.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening to The Leap. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a follow, or even better, share it with someone who you think will get value out of it. Big thanks to our main sponsor, Ethos 360 Recruitment. It was actually just us sponsoring ourselves.
This podcast has been produced by The Content Engine.
We got the remedy. College and Giants. Yeah. Selling the shit, we buying it.